The massive observation station hung in the darkness between Mars and Jupiter, invisible to human eyes. For 200 years it had watched the small blue planet spin through space. Inside the station, Admiral Kextar studied the screens that showed him everything about the creatures called humans. He had seen their first wars with sticks and stones. He watched them discover fire, build cities, and fight each other with metal weapons. He saw them split the atom and reach for their moon. Every battle, every invention, every moment of their history was recorded in the Empire's vast databases. Admiral, his aide Korthek spoke softly. "The Council requests your final report on the human species." Kextar smiled, showing his sharp teeth. "Tell them we are ready. These humans are predictable creatures. They fight in patterns we understand. Their technology is primitive. Their ships are slow and weak. When we attack, they will fall quickly." Far below on the observation deck, Captain Jake Morrison guided his ship through routine patrol near the asteroid belt. The USS Defiance was one of Earth's newest ships, but compared to the hidden Zeltharian technology, it was barely more advanced than a wooden boat. "Captain," called Navigation Officer Lisa Grant from her station. "I'm picking up some strange readings ahead. It looks like empty space, but our scanners can't see through it." Morrison frowned at the display. In 20 years of service, he had never seen anything like this. "What do you think, Pete?" Chief Engineer Pete Collins scratched his head as he looked at the data. "Could be some kind of natural phenomenon, maybe a gas cloud that blocks our sensors, but I've never seen readings like these before." "Take us closer," Morrison ordered, "but keep our weapons ready, just in case." The Defiance moved slowly toward the strange area. As they got nearer, the readings became even more confusing. It was as if something was there, but their instruments could not detect it properly. Back on the hidden station, alarms suddenly began ringing. A technician called out in alarm. "Admiral, one of the monitoring probes has been activated. The humans have found it." Kextar rushed to the main screen. He watched as the human ship approached the hidden probe. For 2 centuries, no human had come close enough to trigger the ancient warning systems. "How is this possible?" he demanded. "Our probes are completely hidden." "Unknown, sir, but the probe is definitely active. The humans are scanning it directly." On the Defiance, Pete Collins stared at his instruments in amazement. "Captain, there's definitely something there. It's big, and it's made of materials I don't recognize. This isn't natural." Morrison felt a chill run down his spine. "Are you saying this is artificial? Made by someone?" "Yes, sir. And whoever built it has technology far beyond ours." Lisa Grant's voice was tense as she spoke. "Captain, I'm detecting movement. Whatever this thing is, it's powering up." The probe, hidden for so long, suddenly became visible as its stealth systems failed. The human ship found itself face to face with technology that was centuries ahead of anything Earth had ever created. Morrison stared at the alien device floating in space before them. "Pete, record everything. Send a message to Earth Command immediately. Tell them we have made contact with alien technology." On the observation station, Admiral Kextar watched the humans examine his probe. After 200 years of secret watching, the humans had finally found them. There could be no more hiding. "Send word to the home world," he commanded. "Tell Supreme Chancellor Vexthol that the time has come. We will begin the invasion immediately." The message traveled across space faster than light, reaching the heart of the Zeltharian Empire within hours. In the great capital city of Zeltharian, Supreme Chancellor Vexthol received the news with satisfaction. "Excellent," he said to his assembled council. "For 2 centuries we have studied these humans. We know everything about them. Their wars, their weapons, their tactics. They are a violent species but predictable. Their technology is weak compared to ours." General Tekmar, the Empire's greatest military leader, nodded in agreement. "Our simulations show that 300 ships will be more than enough to conquer their entire world. They have perhaps 50 ships capable of real combat. Their weapons cannot penetrate our shields." "And their behavior?" asked the Chancellor. "Completely predictable, sir. We have observed them for generations. When faced with superior force, they either surrender or fight using standard military tactics. Either way, they will lose quickly, the Chancellor smiled. Then we shall give them one chance to surrender peacefully. When they refuse, as our models predict they will, we shall show them the power of the Empire. Back on the Defiance, Morrison watched as the alien probe suddenly moved away from them. It accelerated impossibly fast, disappearing into deep space within seconds. Did you get all the readings? He asked Pete. Yes, sir. But Captain, this changes everything. There's an alien civilization out there, and they've been watching us. That probe was ancient. It's been here for a very long time. Lisa Grant looked up from her station. Captain, Earth Command is responding to our message. They want us to return home immediately. As the Defiance turned toward Earth, none of the crew could know that their discovery had just triggered the greatest war in human history. The Zeltharian Empire was already mobilizing its invasion fleet. In the depths of space, Admiral Kexitar prepared for what he believed would be a simple conquest. His ships were faster, stronger, and more advanced than anything the humans possessed. His weapons could destroy human ships from distances the humans could not even detect. But there was something the Admiral did not know. Something that 200 years of careful observation had failed to reveal. The Empire had watched every human war, recorded every battle, analyzed every weapon. They believed they understood everything about humanity. They were wrong. As the first Zeltharian ships began their journey toward Earth, carrying weapons that could crack planets and shields that could stop any human attack, they moved with confidence. The Empire had conquered 47 different worlds using the same method. Observe, understand, then attack with overwhelming force. It had never failed before. The humans of Earth went about their daily lives, unaware that their existence was about to be challenged by an empire that spanned the galaxy. But deep in their military headquarters, generals and admirals studied the data from the Defiance and began to prepare for something they had never faced before. War with an alien empire that had been watching them for centuries. The chess game was about to begin, but neither side truly understood the rules they would be playing by. 3 months after the discovery of the alien probe, the sky above Earth suddenly filled with ships. Not just a few ships, but hundreds of them. They appeared without warning, their massive forms blocking out the sun over major cities around the world. Admiral Kexitar stood on the command bridge of his flagship, the Infinite Conquest, and looked down at the small blue planet below. His fleet of 300 ships surrounded Earth like predators circling wounded prey. Open communication channels, he ordered. Let us speak to these humans before we destroy them. On Earth, every television, radio, and computer screen suddenly displayed the same image. A tall reptilian creature with golden scales and burning red eyes stared out at humanity. When he spoke, his voice was translated into every human language. People of Earth, Admiral Kexitar began, his voice cold and commanding. I am Admiral Kexitar of the Zeltharian Empire. For 200 of your years we have watched you. We have seen your wars, your violence, your primitive technology. We know everything about you. In the underground command center beneath the Colorado Mountains, Colonel Amy Rodriguez watched the broadcast with growing horror. Around her, military officers from every nation on Earth sat in stunned silence. We offer you one chance, the alien continued. Surrender now, and your deaths will be quick. Resist, and we will show you suffering beyond your imagination. You have one of your hours to decide. The transmission ended, leaving Earth in chaos. But Colonel Rodriguez was already moving. Get me General Thompson immediately. Activate all military units worldwide. If these aliens think we'll just roll over and die, they're about to learn something new about humans. General Rick Thompson's voice crackled over the communicator from Luna Base. Amy, our best ships are already moving to intercept. We've got maybe 50 vessels that can fight in deep space, against 300 alien ships. Then we'll make those 50 ships count, Rodriguez replied. What do we know about their technology? The probe data from Captain Morrison's ship shows energy weapons and defensive shields that our current weapons can't penetrate. But we're not giving up without a fight. High above Earth, the first battle began as human ships engaged the Zeltharian fleet. The USS Courage, commanded by Captain Tony Lewis, led the initial attack. His ship fired every weapon it had, but the missiles and energy beams simply bounced off the alien shields. "No effect, sir," his weapons officer reported. "Their shields are absorbing everything we throw at them." Captain Lewis gritted his teeth. "Then we'll get closer. All ships, move in for close combat. If we can't break their shields, maybe we can find weak spots." The human ships charged forward, but the Zeltharian response was devastating. Purple energy beams lanced out from the alien vessels, cutting through human ships like paper. Within minutes, half of Earth's space fleet was destroyed or crippled. Admiral Kextar watched the battle with satisfaction. Exactly as predicted. Their weapons are useless against us and their tactics are standard military formations. This will be over within hours. But then something unexpected happened. The CNS Guardian, commanded by Commander Steve Parker, was badly damaged and limping away from the battle. One engine was dead, half his weapons were offline, and his shields had failed completely. Any logical commander would have retreated or surrendered. The ship was clearly doomed. Instead, Commander Parker did something that made no sense at all. He turned his dying ship around and flew directly at the largest Zeltharian vessel in the area. "Sir, what are you doing?" his navigation officer asked in panic. "Something they won't expect," Parker replied grimly. "All hands prepare for impact." "We're going to ram them." The Zeltharian captain of the target ship watched in confusion as the damaged human vessel approached. His computers could not understand why a crippled ship would attack instead of fleeing. "Sir, should we destroy it?" his weapons officer asked. "No, let them come. One broken ship cannot harm us." But as the Guardian struck the Zeltharian ship's shields, something impossible happened. Parker had overloaded his ship's reactor core just before impact. The explosion tore through the alien shields and destroyed both ships in a brilliant flash of light. On the Infinite Conquest, Admiral Kextar stared at the explosion in shock. How is that possible? Their ship was destroyed. Why did they continue attacking? His science officer studied the readings. "Unknown, sir. Our calculations show that the human commander knew his ship was doomed, yet he chose to attack anyway. This behavior was not predicted in any of our models." The battle continued, but more human ships began copying Parker's desperate tactics. Captain Lisa Grant, now commanding the rebuilt USS Defiance after Morrison's promotion, watched as ship after ship made impossible attacks. "All ships," she broadcast on the command frequency. "If you're going down, take one of them with you. Make every hit count." What followed was unlike any battle the Zeltharian Empire had ever seen. Human ships that should have retreated instead attacked with suicidal fury. Damaged vessels that should have surrendered continued fighting until they exploded. Pilots who should have ejected stayed with their ships to ensure maximum damage to the enemy. Back on Earth, Dr. Helen Baker worked frantically in her laboratory, studying the fragments of alien technology that had been recovered from the battle. As Earth's leading expert on xenobiology, she was trying to understand how these creatures thought. "Colonel Rodriguez," she called over the communicator, "I need to speak with you immediately. I've found something disturbing in the alien technology." Rodriguez arrived at the lab within minutes. "What have you discovered, Doctor?" Helen pointed to a complex device on her examination table. "This is some kind of computer from one of their ships. I've managed to access part of its memory. Amy, they've been watching us for over 200 years. Watching us how? Everything. Every war we've ever fought, every weapon we've ever built, every military tactic we've ever used. They have detailed records of human behavior going back centuries." Rodriguez felt a chill run down her spine. "That's how they knew our weapons wouldn't work against their shields. They've seen everything we can do." "Not everything," Helen said quietly. "I've been studying their behavioral models of humanity. They think they understand us completely, but there's something they missed." "What?" Helen looked at the reports. Coming in from the space battle, where human ships continued their impossible attacks against overwhelming odds. "They understand our technology and our standard military tactics. But they don't understand this." She pointed to a report about Commander Parker's ramming attack. "According to their models, humans should surrender when faced with certain death. They don't understand that sometimes we choose to fight anyway. even when it makes no logical sense. Above Earth, Admiral Kextar was learning this lesson the hard way. His fleet had expected to destroy the human ships quickly and move on to bombarding the planet. Instead, they found themselves in a grinding battle against opponents who refused to follow the rules. "Admiral," his tactical officer reported, "we've lost 12 ships to ramming attacks alone. The humans are using their own destruction as a weapon." Kextar's confidence was beginning to crack. "This makes no sense. Why would they throw away their lives for no strategic gain?" "Unknown, sir. Perhaps they are simply more primitive than we calculated." But as more human ships made impossible attacks, scoring hits that should have been prevented by superior alien technology, Admiral Kextar began to realize something terrifying. For 200 years, the Empire had watched humanity and believed they understood everything about them. But the humans fighting above Earth were not acting like the humans in their historical records. They were acting like something else entirely, something that the Empire's careful observations had never prepared them for. Admiral Kextar stood before the massive tactical display in his command center, staring at battle reports that made no sense. His fleet had been fighting the humans for 3 weeks, and what should have been a simple conquest was turning into a nightmare. "Show me the footage again," he commanded his aide. On the screen, he watched human ships performing maneuvers that violated every principle of space combat. A damaged human cruiser with no shields and failing engines had somehow destroyed 2 Zeltharian destroyers by flying between them and detonating its cargo bay full of mining explosives. The tactic was completely illogical, yet it had worked. "Admiral," his science officer Velthar approached nervously. "I've completed the analysis of human combat patterns. The results are disturbing." "Explain." "Sir, the humans are not following any recognizable military doctrine. Their tactics change randomly in the middle of battle. They use emotional responses instead of logical strategy. They sacrifice strategic advantages for unpredictable attacks. Our combat computers cannot calculate their next moves because their decisions appear to be based on factors we don't understand." Kextar's scaled face showed confusion. "That's impossible. We have observed human warfare for centuries. They have clear patterns, established tactics. That's what makes this so strange, sir. The humans we're fighting now are not acting like the humans in our historical records. It's as if they've become a completely different species." Meanwhile, on the bridge of his flagship, Captain Jake Morrison was learning to fight a war unlike any in human history. Promoted to admiral after the first week of battle, he now commanded the combined human fleet from his new ship, the UES Revenge. "Admiral," Captain Pete Collins called from the engineering station. "The alien ship we captured last week is ready for combat trials." Morrison looked at the hybrid vessel on his display. His engineers had somehow managed to merge human and Zeltharian technology, creating something that neither species had ever seen before. The ship looked like it had been built by insane people, with human weapons bolted onto alien hull plates, and Earth computers trying to control Zeltharian engines. "Does it work?" Morrison asked. Pete grinned. "Sir, I honestly don't know. The systems are so mixed up that I can't predict what will happen when we fire the main guns. But that might be exactly what we need." Captain Lisa Grant, now commanding the experimental vessel CNS Chaos, was about to test Pete's theory. Her ship was a nightmare of conflicting technologies that should never have worked together. Human missile systems were connected to alien, targeting computers. Earth-built shields were powered by Zeltharian energy cores. Nothing about the ship made sense from an engineering perspective. "All stations prepare for combat," she announced. "Remember, we don't know what our own ship will do, so the enemy certainly won't be able to predict us." As the chaos engaged a Zeltharian patrol squadron, something amazing happened. The ship's weapons fired in completely random patterns. Sometimes the missiles exploded early, creating debris fields that confused enemy sensors. Sometimes the energy beams fired at the wrong targets but bounced off asteroid surfaces to hit enemies from unexpected angles. The Zeltharian ships, with their advanced computers and predictive systems, found themselves unable to counter tactics that changed randomly every few seconds. Their computer systems tried to calculate optimal responses to human actions, but the humans weren't being optimal. They were being chaotic. Back on Earth, civilian scientist Dr. Ben Clark was working with former NASA Administrator Carol Hughes to develop new weapons based on a revolutionary principle. They were designed to be unpredictable rather than efficient. Carol, look at this, Ben said, pointing to his computer screen. The aliens are using predictive technology to counter our attacks. But what if we built weapons that work differently every time we use them? Carol studied his designs. You want to build a missile that doesn't know where it's going? Exactly. A missile with randomly changing guidance systems, multiple warheads that separate at unpredictable times, and explosive yields that vary based on quantum randomness. The aliens can't predict what it will do because it doesn't know what it will do until the moment it happens. Meanwhile, Dr. Helen Baker had made an even more disturbing discovery while studying captured Zeltharian computers. She rushed to Admiral Morrison's flagship with her findings. Admiral, I found something. Incredible. The Zeltharian Empire has conquered 47 other species using the exact same method they're trying to use on us. Morrison looked up from his tactical plans. What method? They observe a species for decades or centuries, studying their behavior until they can predict everything they'll do. Then they attack with overwhelming force using their knowledge to counter every possible resistance strategy. And it's worked 47 times? Every time, sir. But here's what's strange. I've studied their records of those other species. Every one of them became predictable once the Zeltharians started observing them. The act of being watched seemed to lock them into fixed behavioral patterns. Morrison frowned. But that's not what's happening to us. No, sir, we're doing the opposite. The more pressure they put on us, the more unpredictable we become. It's like crisis brings out something in humanity that the aliens have never seen before. This was becoming clear on the battlefield as well. Captain Tony Lewis, commanding a small squadron of hybrid ships, had developed what he called chaos tactics. His ships would deliberately damage their own systems to create unpredictable performance characteristics. Sir, you're running the engines at 150% power, his engineer warned. They could explode at any moment. Good, Lewis replied. If we don't know when our engines will fail, the enemy certainly won't know either. All ships push everything past red line. Make yourselves unpredictable. The result was a battle where human ships performed impossible maneuvers because their own crews didn't know what their vessels were capable of. Ships with failing engines somehow outran healthy alien vessels. Weapons with broken targeting systems hit targets that working systems would have missed. Admiral Kextar watched these battles with growing horror. His tactical computers had given up trying to predict human actions. The error messages scrolled endlessly across his screens. Behavior pattern not recognized. Tactical logic error. Prediction matrix failure. Admiral, his communications officer announced, Supreme Chancellor Vexithul is requesting a full status report. Kextar dreaded making this call. How could he explain to the leader of the Empire that he was losing a war against a species they completely understood? When the Chancellor's image appeared on the screen, his reptilian features showed impatience. Admiral, your reports make no sense. How are these primitive humans causing you difficulties? Chancellor, they're not fighting like the humans we observed. Our behavioral models predicted that they would use standard military tactics when faced with superior force. Instead, they're using strategies that seem designed to be unpredictable rather than effective. Explain. They deliberately damage their own ships to create random performance characteristics. They use weapons that work differently each time. They're fired. They make tactical decisions based on emotional responses rather than logical analysis. Our computers cannot calculate responses to actions that appear to have no strategic purpose. Chancellor Vexthul's eyes burned with anger. Are you telling me that our greatest military fleet is being defeated by irrationality? I believe so, sir. That's impossible. We have studied these creatures for 2 centuries. We know everything about them. But even as the Chancellor spoke those words, both leaders were beginning to realize a terrible truth. The Empire had, indeed, observed humanity for 200 years. They had seen every war, every battle, every weapon. But they had never seen humanity facing total extinction. And that, it turned out, was when humans became something entirely different from what they had been before. Supreme Chancellor Vexthul paced across the great throne room on the Zeltharian homeworld, his golden scales reflecting the light from 1,000 holographic displays. Each screen showed another impossible human victory against his forces. "How many reinforcements have we sent?" he demanded of General Theckamar. 2,000 ships, Chancellor. Our largest military deployment in 3 centuries. And the result? General Theckamar's voice was tight with frustration. The humans have captured over 300 of our vessels and somehow made them functional, despite using completely incompatible technology. They're turning our own weapons against us. The Chancellor's claws scraped against the metal floor. This is impossible. These humans were supposed to be a minor conquest, a simple species that barely controls their own star system. Sir, I believe we may have made a fundamental error in our assessment. Explain. The humans we observed for 2 centuries were fighting other humans. Now they're fighting us, and it appears that fighting an extinction-level threat has activated behavioral patterns we never saw before. Meanwhile, Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his flagship, now a hybrid monster of human and alien technology that looked like it had been assembled by creative madmen. Around him, his officers worked at control stations that mixed Earth computers with Zeltharian interfaces in ways that should never have worked. "Admiral," Captain Pete Collins reported from the engineering station, "the captured alien fleet is ready for operation. We now have over 400 ships, most of them running on what I can only describe as creative engineering." Morrison smiled grimly. "What's our status on the Chaos Doctrine? Every ship in the fleet now operates with deliberately randomized systems. No 2 vessels have the same capabilities, and most of them can't even predict their own performance. The aliens can't plan counters to weapons and tactics that change every time we use them." Captain Lisa Grant's voice crackled over the communication system from her command ship, the CNS Disorder. "Admiral, my squadron is ready to begin the counterattack. We've identified 3 major Zeltharian supply bases in the outer system." "What's your battle plan, Captain?" "We don't have one, sir. We're going to make it up as we go along and let the enemy try to figure out what we're doing." This was the new reality of warfare that humanity had created. Traditional military planning required predictable outcomes, but the humans had embraced unpredictability as their greatest weapon. Ships that might explode or might perform miracles. Weapons that could miss completely or hit targets that shouldn't have been reachable. Tactics that violated every principle of military science. Captain Tony Lewis led the first assault on the Zeltharian supply station at Europa. His squadron of 12 ships approached the heavily defended base with no formation and no coordinated plan. "All ships," he broadcast, "attack whatever looks important. If your weapons malfunction, use them anyway. If your ship starts falling apart, fly it until it can't fly anymore." The result was a battle that no military academy would ever use as a teaching example. Human ships attacked randomly, their crews making tactical decisions based on gut feelings rather than strategic analysis. Some ships charged directly into the enemy guns. Others approached slowly, pretending to be damaged. One ship actually was damaged, but continued fighting anyway. The Zeltharian defenders found themselves unable to coordinate a response. Their tactical computers kept displaying error messages as they tried to analyze human actions that seemed to serve no logical purpose. "Sir," the base commander's tactical officer reported, "the human attack pattern makes no sense. They're not concentrating fire on our weakest points. They're not using formation flying. They appear to be attacking completely at random." "Then counter their random attacks." "Sir, how do you counter randomness? Our defensive systems are designed to respond to logical threats. That was exactly the problem the Empire was facing throughout the war. Every Zeltharian system, from weapons to shields to tactical computers, was designed to be efficient. They worked by predicting what an enemy would do and preparing the optimal response. But humanity had accidentally discovered something that the Empire's advanced science could not counter: true chaos. Dr. Helen Baker, working in her laboratory on Pansy Luna Base, had begun to understand why this was happening. She had spent months studying both human and Zeltharian psychology, and her findings were remarkable. "General Rodriguez," she called over the communicator, "I need to brief you on my latest research." Colonel Amy Rodriguez, now promoted to general, and commanding Earth's defensive operations, arrived at the lab within hours. "Helen, what have you found?" "Amy, I think I understand why we're winning this war. The Zeltharian Empire has conquered 47 other species, but they've never faced anything like humanity." "In what way?" Dr. Baker pulled up a complex chart on her display. "Every other species they conquered was highly organized, logical, and predictable. When faced with superior force, they either surrendered immediately or fought using standard military tactics that the Empire could easily counter. And were different? Completely different. Humans have something that none of the other species possessed: the ability to become more unpredictable when under extreme stress. Most species become more organized when threatened. We become more chaotic." Rodriguez studied the data. "You're saying that the pressure of this war is actually making us harder to defeat?" "Exactly. The Empire's observations of humanity were made during peacetime and small-scale conflicts. They never saw what happens to human nature when we face complete extinction. This was becoming evident on battlefields throughout the solar system. Human forces, now calling themselves the Chaos Fleet, were achieving impossible victories through sheer unpredictability." Commander Kate Williams led a raid on a Zeltharian communications hub, using a fleet of ships that had been so heavily modified that their own engineers couldn't predict how they would perform. "All ships, remember the new rule," she broadcast. "If something can go wrong, let it go wrong in a creative way. Use your malfunctions as weapons." Her ship, the UES Entropy, had been deliberately damaged in 17 different ways to create unpredictable performance characteristics. The engines ran at random power levels. The weapons fired at slightly different strengths each time. Even the life support system fluctuated randomly. When the ship engaged the Zeltharian defenders, the results were spectacular. The Entropy's erratic movement patterns made it impossible to target. Its weapons, firing at random intervals and power levels, created an unpredictable attack pattern that overwhelmed the alien defensive systems. "Sir, the human ship appears to be malfunctioning," the Zeltharian commander's tactical officer reported. "Then it should be easy to destroy." "No, sir. The malfunctions seem to be helping them. Our targeting computers can't lock onto a ship that moves randomly." Admiral Kextar received reports of these battles with growing despair. His fleet had been reinforced to over 2,000 ships, but they were losing ground to a human force that should have been overwhelmed months ago. "Admiral," his science officer reported, "I've completed the analysis of human tactical evolution. The results are unprecedented." "Show me." The display showed a complex timeline of human military development. "Sir, in the 6 months since this war began, human military technology and tactics have evolved faster than in the previous century. They're not just adapting to our weapons and tactics, they're becoming something entirely new." Kextar stared at the data in horror. "Are you saying they're evolving during the war itself?" "Yes, sir. And the direction of their evolution is toward maximum unpredictability. They're becoming impossible to predict or counter using any logical system." For the first time in his long military career, Admiral Kextar began to understand that he might lose this war, not because the humans were stronger or had better technology, but because they were becoming something that the Empire's entire military philosophy could not handle. An enemy that grew stronger through chaos rather than order. An enemy that became more dangerous the more pressure was applied to them. An enemy that the Empire had watched for centuries without ever truly seeing. Supreme Chancellor Vexthal stood on the command bridge of his personal dreadnought, the Empire's Wrath, as it led a fleet of 1,000 ships toward Earth. This was nearly half of the Empire's total military force, gathered for one final assault, to end the war that had become an embarrassment to Zeltharian pride. "Chancellor," Admiral Kextar reported via communication link, "the Grand Fleet is in position. Earth's human forces have approximately 200 ships remaining, most of them damaged hybrid vessels." "Excellent," Vexthal replied. "We will end this today." No more games, no more surprises. We will simply overwhelm them with pure force. But even as he spoke, the Chancellor could see something on his tactical display that troubled him. The human ships were not arranged in any defensive formation. They hung in space around Earth seemingly at random, some alone, some in small groups, some apparently drifting without power. Are they already defeated? He wondered aloud. His tactical officer studied the readings. Unknown, sir. Their ship positions make no strategic sense. It's possible they're surrendering, or it could be another of their unpredictable tactics. On the bridge of his flagship, the UES Defiant Spirit, Admiral Jake Morrison watched the massive alien fleet approach. His ship was a masterpiece of chaotic engineering, combining human determination with alien technology in ways that violated every principle of spacecraft design. Admiral, Captain Pete Collins called from his engineering station. All ships report ready, though I should mention that about half our fleet might explode if we look at them wrong. Morrison smiled grimly. That's exactly what I was hoping. You'd say, Lisa, what's the status of the special project? Captain Lisa Grant's voice came through the communication system from her command ship, a vessel that looked like it had been built by insane children using alien spare parts. Admiral, the quantum chaos generator is ready. Dr. Clark's theory is about to get its final test. In laboratories across Earth and Luna Base, Dr. Ben Clark and former NASA Administrator Carol Hughes had spent months developing humanity's ultimate weapon. Not a device designed to be efficient, but one designed to be completely unpredictable. Carol, Ben said as he watched the readings from their test device, I think we've actually created something that the universe itself can't predict. The quantum chaos generator was based on a simple principle. Instead of trying to defeat the alien technology through superior force, they would defeat it by making victory impossible to calculate. The device would randomly alter the laws of physics in small areas, making it impossible for any computer to predict what would happen next. As the Zeltharian Grand Fleet closed on Earth, Chancellor Vex Thule prepared to broadcast his final surrender demand. But before he could speak, something impossible happened. The human ships suddenly began moving in ways that defied the laws of physics. Some accelerated without visible engines. Others changed direction without using thrust. One ship appeared to be in 3 different places at the same time. What's happening? The Chancellor demanded. His science officer stared at his instruments in confusion. Sir, the readings make no sense. The laws of physics appear to be fluctuating randomly throughout the battle zone. That's impossible. Yes, sir, but it's happening anyway. Captain Tony Lewis, commanding the Chaos Squadron aboard his ship, the CNS Impossible, watched as his vessel did things that his own engineers swore it could not do. The quantum chaos field had turned the entire battle zone into an area where normal rules no longer applied. All ships, he broadcast, don't try to understand what's happening. Just attack anything that looks alien and let the universe figure out the details. What followed was the strangest battle in galactic history. Human ships that should have been destroyed simply refused to explode. Weapons that should have missed their targets hit them anyway. Ships with no working engines somehow outmaneuvered vessels with advanced propulsion systems. The Zeltharian fleet, with all their advanced technology and predictive computers, found themselves helpless against an enemy that had made prediction itself impossible. Sir, Admiral Kextar reported to the Chancellor, our computers have completely failed. They cannot calculate responses to actions that appear to violate physical law. Chancellor Vex Thule watched in horror as his magnificent fleet was torn apart by an enemy that shouldn't have been able to fight back. How many ships have we lost? Over 400, sir, and the humans appear to be getting stronger. This was true. As the battle continued, the human ships seemed to become more impossible rather than more damaged. Captain Pete Collins, now commanding a ship that existed in 7 dimensions simultaneously, led an attack on the Empire's Wrath itself. Sir, his navigation officer reported, according to our instruments, we don't exist, but we're definitely shooting at something. Keep shooting, Collins replied. If we don't exist, then they can't kill us. The logic was perfect in its complete illogic, and it worked exactly as well as it shouldn't have. Meanwhile, Dr. Helen Baker had been monitoring the battle from her laboratory and had made a final discovery about human nature that explained everything. Admiral Morrison, she called over the communication link. I understand now what makes us different from every other species the Empire has conquered. What is it, Doctor? Every other species they faced became more organized under pressure. They tried to fight the Empire using logic and efficiency, but humans do the opposite. When we face extinction, we don't become more logical. We become more impossible. Morrison dodged an alien energy blast that somehow curved around his ship instead of hitting it. That explains a lot, actually. The Empire spent 2 centuries watching us during peacetime when we were trying to be civilized and logical, but they never saw what happens when we decide that logic isn't working. This was the truth that the Zeltharian Empire was learning too late. For 200 years, they had observed human wars and conflicts, cataloging every weapon, every tactic, every strategy. They believed they understood humanity completely, but they had never seen humanity facing absolute extinction. They had never seen what humans became when logic and reason failed. They had never witnessed the moment when an entire species decided that if they were going to die anyway, they might as well die in the most impossible way imaginable. Chancellor Vexthal, watching his grand fleet being destroyed by an enemy that appeared to be violating the fundamental laws of reality, finally understood the magnitude of his error. Admiral, he called to Kextar, withdraw all forces immediately. Sir, we cannot defeat an enemy that refuses to follow the rules of existence itself. Withdraw now, before they become even more impossible. As the surviving Zeltharian ships began their retreat, Admiral Morrison broadcast a message to the fleeing alien fleet. People of the Zeltharian Empire, he said, his voice carried across space by quantum systems that shouldn't have been able to function. You spent 200 years watching us, thinking you understood what you saw. But you never realized that everything you observed was just us being polite. Dr. Carol Hughes, monitoring the battle from her laboratory, added her own message to the broadcast. You saw our wars and thought you understood our violence. You saw our technology and thought you knew our limits. But you never realized that everything you watched was just us getting started. The final message came from Captain Lisa Grant, speaking from her ship that now existed in several parallel dimensions simultaneously. You wanted to see humanity's full power? Congratulations. You just did. As the Zeltharian fleet retreated, carrying news of their defeat to an empire that had never known military failure, Admiral Kextar sent one final transmission to the Imperial Council. Council members, he said, his voice filled with something that might have been respect or terror. We observed these humans for 2 centuries. We saw everything they were. We cataloged every aspect of their civilization. We believed we understood them completely. He paused, watching Earth grow smaller in his display as his fleet fled. We were wrong. We saw everything they were, but we never imagined what they could become. When faced with extinction, humans don't surrender or fight logically. They become impossible. They turn desperation into strength, chaos into victory, and the threat of death into a reason to refuse to follow the laws of physics. The transmission ended, and the Zeltharian Empire faced the unthinkable reality of their first military defeat in over 1,000 years. Behind them, orbiting a small blue planet, 200 impossible human ships continued their patrol, ready to become even more impossible if anyone else decided to test them. The galaxy had learned a new truth. Humanity's greatest power wasn't their technology or their weapons. It was their complete refusal to accept that anything was impossible when they truly needed it not to be.